And I am here today for another instance, another episode, another experience of whatever this is, something about techno. And I'm here with the chat, obviously, and our very good friend, not Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas is not here.
Hi, this is not Thomas.
We are here with Abe Duque. He looks cooler than me. Look at him. He's got a better camera. He's got a modular system. My closet is open in the background. Someone close the closet. I can't reach it. Hi. Feeling a little silly today for Taco Tuesday. Bug Tank, thank you for remembering. I never have tacos, though. We just talk about it.
We just talk about tacos?
I
haven't had a taco in a long time.
We should fix that. Let's go get some tacos.
They're kind of annoying to prepare.
It's so fiddly, right? And you end up with a mess all over the table. But it's also fun because, you know, kids love it. My kids have a great time when we do that.
Yeah. Fun for kids means a lot of work for adults.
This is true. until they grow up a little more and then they don't want you to help them.
Right.
David, what's up? David Schwartz asks, making Electro this week. Yes. At the last minute, I was like, all right, am I going to do Electro? I said maybe last week we would do it. And then at the last minute, I was like, going to, no, let's just keep working on the same track and keep the progression going and do something new. But then just right before we went live, I told Abe, okay, Electro.
I tried to convince you to keep it housey.
Housey with a Z.
Yeah, that's the German version of house.
So, dangerous. Abe and John on the same stream. Yes, Max. We'll try not to break anything or hurt anybody. And anyway, where's my script? We're a little bit haphazard today because, you know, Thomas isn't here. We've had to take care of, like, all the stream details ourselves. We're disorganized, so we're just going to make the best of it. And
well, let's tell everybody what they're watching right now.
That's usually what we... Well, I already said it's Techno Tuesday.
Well, on what TV?
Well, 343 Labs TV, of course. I think they know that already.
Okay.
They can see it in the title. But yes, hey, this is 343 Labs TV. Welcome. And
we're here every
day. We're never going to stop. And, okay, we'll get a little more serious now. We're not doing any giveaways, just as a reminder. That's done. It was just the first 4 weeks, the introductory month of madness.
Well, actually, we were talking about that earlier, and you said you were going to give away a part of yourself.
Some beard trimmings or something? Like,
give yourself away, John.
I'm giving myself to you. I'm giving you my all. That is what we are giving away today. And, all right, so again, it's Techno Taco Tuesday. I'm here with Abe. And Abe and I are going to hang out and, you know, collaborate a little bit. That's what I've told him, that, you know, I've got this track here that's started. It's a sketch, and we're going to start playing with the elements, and I'm going to talk to Abe, and I'm hoping we can bounce some ideas back and forth, because honestly, it's been, as long as we've been friends and we've worked together in so many ways for so many years, but we barely, if ever, like, collaborated on a track. Like, we've never actually sat down and made a John Selway and Abe Duque track together. I might do something and he would remix it, and vice versa, or we would be do the whole Rancho Relaxo All-Stars thing and perform live. But very few opportunities we've had to just kind of hang out and be creative together. So why not? And if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. If not, we had fun hanging out with Abe. And anyway, Abe will be monitoring the chat and you know, taking Thomas's role to that extent. And anyway, before we get started, let's answer a couple of questions that I see.
Well, Delirium asks, is that a Shure condenser, John? The sound quality is pretty awesome.
Ooh. It is an Audio-Technica 3040 or 4030, one of those. The nicer one. That I don't know where this one came from. I'm not even sure if they make it anymore. It's an older, it's like from the 90s or something. But yeah, I really like it. And I've been using it as my cool podcaster mic or streamer mic or whatever I am. And who's on first, Abe?
What? Who's on
TAETRO
first?
just asked if we were Abbott and Costello, so I asked you who's on first. And you're saying...
I'm just trying to shut off my phone because it went off during our thing here, and that's kind of a no-no, I guess.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. All right, so let's stop wasting time and take a little bit of a listen to what I have loaded up in my session. that sound. Abe heard it earlier and he said, "Is that a cat?" Because I was playing around with this.
What's making that sound? How are you making that sound?
I'm not going to do that in the track necessarily. It just happens to be the delay was set up there. So yeah, it's an analog. It's just a live. I think, yeah, this is just a couple of. This is like a preset kit in the drum rack that I put a bunch of effects on for the drums. Let's check that out. And this is actually, there's some stuff going on here with the sound of the drums some little tricks that I like to do to electro drums. In the same way that when I was starting the techno track in the beginning, I was taking these clean 909 samples in the core kits and live, and then just blasting the heck out of them with distortion to make them big and powerful. I'm doing a little bit of the same thing here. Well, I am doing the same thing plus some other tonal variation. But, let's turn off the effects and hear what just the straight... This should all be in a rack, shouldn't it? Just what the straight drums sound like. Okay. But then we have... This is the very kind of electro-y thing I like to do, and that is to use a vocoder on drums.
A vocoder on drums?
A vocoder on drums.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm using it as an effect.
Well, for those that don't know, what is a vocoder?
You're turning this into a lesson.
Well, this is a lesson. People want to know how to do this.
So, we could talk. I mean, vocoders are, when you think of electro and you think of early influences like, say, Kraftwerk and robot voices, the vocoder is part and parcel of in terms of stylistic elements with electro. And you usually on voices, but I'm using it here as an effect on the drums. And there's two parts to a vocoder. Basically, there's a carrier signal, which could be anything. It could be a sawtooth wave from a synthesizer or any synth sound, but typically for your straight kind of like Cylon, like robot voices, it's something like a sawtooth wave or a square. But then it could also be noise. Right now I'm using white noise as the carrier, and that signal from the carrier runs through the other main part of the vocoder, which is this really complex filter bank. So each one of these lines here represents a different frequency of a filter. And it's kind of dividing the signal up into all these different frequency bands that can then be modulated. So, if there's more high frequencies coming into the input, you'll hear more of the high bands. And if there are more low frequencies, you'll hear more of the low bands. And then...
And when you say modulated,
well,
what do you mean?
It's being controlled by the input signal, the amplitude of the input signal. So how loud or how quiet the signal is at different frequencies coming into the vocoder. That's routed in to control the level of each of these bands. Right? So, you can see it right here. The kick drum, we're hearing through these bands. And we're hearing more like the snare drum and the hi-hats through the high bands. But here's what, there's the dry signal. There's the filtered signal. I can change the number of bands, which is giving you like a higher resolution, basically. It's divided up into a larger number of narrower bands. Or you can go down to the 4. And then, it's giving these drums, because the carrier is noise, we're not hearing the drums right now. We're hearing the noise through the filter that's being modulated by the drums. So the noise sounds like the drums. You hear the character, the shape, and some of the tone of the drums, but it's sort of like it's being turned into like noise drums. What was I on, 16? All right. And you can shape the tone of it by adjusting the levels of the bands. You can adjust the frequency range to narrow it down.
Do you usually use it all the way wet, meaning full on?
No, well, in this case,
or...
I'm mixing in the dry to give it a little bit of the snap from the original, right? Right. So the other thing I'm doing is it has a formant control, which basically means you're shifting the frequency of all those bands up and down at the same time. You don't see it happening, but it lets you kind of shift the whole filter bank up and down, which is a really cool effect that we might, let's say, modulate over the course of this track and the arrangement. And we also have, there's an envelope follower that shapes there's an attack and release. So every time the signal comes through, it kind of fades in and fades out. Right now, the attack is at 1 millisecond, so it's instant. But then I can also increase the release and make it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It makes it sound like these big, huge, like, I don't know, banging on metal.
You could almost make a whole track with just that.
Yeah, totally. All right. So anyway, I started out with that. Then there's some EQ here, which is, that may change. Then I'm just blowing the heck out of it with the distortion, with the pedal. Just a little bit of compression. And I'm also here, I was experimenting. Sometimes I use echo as like a tape distortion, tape saturation emulation. And then I put it in a ringy room, a little bit of reverb on it. So it all adds up to kind of big, banging, almost industrial kind of sounding electro drums. And then if I go back and play with the vocoder. All right. So I like all of that. I kind of lose a little bit of the sub and the punch from the kick drum though, so I also routed a separate audio track, and I have only the kick drum coming in from the drum rack on its own. So I have this.
People are asking if you could talk a little bit about the rack at the beginning of the track.
Say again?
I got a question here in the chat. Can you talk about the rack in the beginning of the track?
The rack in the beginning of the track. So
I guess
the drum rack.
Rack that's.
This? Oh no, this. We're looking at the drum rack.
I suppose it's the drum rack that's creating that's going through the vocoder. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm just reading as it comes.
Okay.
You're also getting a lot of compliments on your streaming technique.
Thanks, everyone. I love you too. Oh, see, I told you I was giving you myself today, and that's what you get. Is you get lots of love. I mean, this is basically just, I think we've probably gone over this in some of the other classes. This is, Ableton Live 101 stuff here, but this is a default drum rack preset from the Live library, I believe. I could be wrong. It is a preset. Let's look in the library and see. Yeah, this SH.
I think they want to know about the macros more than anything else.
Right. That's important. So, and this goes for all racks in Live. All these racks are containers. You can have instrument rack, audio effect rack, drum rack, and the drum rack is designed to build percussion instruments, and it has one sound per MIDI note. But all of the racks have 8 macros that can be assigned to any parameters in the rack. So, there's this synth drums. Oh, you know what? This is not a Live library. I'm sorry. This is a Wave Alchemy instrument. Sorry about that. Plug to Wave Alchemy. They make some really cool synthetic drum sample packs. I really like this one. And these are all drum sounds that they're samples from a SH09 synth, put together into this rack. And, really what's happening here is you've got knobs assigned to individual parameters inside of the rack. So let's look at... There's our kick drum. We have a macro assigned to the tuning of the sample. We have a macro called gate that's changing the shape of the envelope, so it's getting shorter. We have a velocity to volume, so this is like a velocity sensitivity. Whoa. We have tone, this is mapped to a low pass filter, and we can see all of these mappings if we click the map button up here. You've got a whole list of all of the parameters that those macros are assigned to. You can also see when the map mode is on, there's the all the available parameters that are able to be assigned are highlighted in green, and then you can see the name of the macro that is connected to them.
David Schwartz wants to know if you could flash your drum MIDI quickly just to have a look at how it looks.
Yeah, really not too complicated. Ooh, what just happened? I've got 2 clips here. All right, I've got everything muted now. Or here's the kick drum. And no velocity on those kicks. They're just all straight. Same thing with the snare / clap, whatever that is. And then we have a second percussion sound. And the hi-hats are doing something else a little bit. Let's deactivate all those other tracks. And yeah, the hi-hats have a little bit of velocity going on, but really simple. And you'll notice when they're all playing together, and I've talked about this with the techno stuff as well, because it's all going through the distortion is compressing everything, the louder sounds are going to kind of duck out the quieter sounds. So you can hear the hi-hat sounds like it's grooving more because of the other sounds kind of getting it cut out when it hits the distortion. So it's kind of exaggerating and accenting the hi-hat when you hear it jump out when the kick drum and the other stuff isn't playing.
Right.
Hey, look, what's up, Nara? You're on live. Nara's like tapping me on the shoulder and asking me questions, and like, she can play the piano, but you got to put your headphones on so you don't. Yeah, and then here's Otto. Hey, where's Otto? All right, see, this is the mayhem that goes on when you have streaming studio in your. There he is. Hi, say hi, wave. Okay, he's being bashful, but kind of getting in my way at the same time. All right, this happened last time, Abe. The kids are wise to this. They come and they like mess with me while I'm trying to pay attention.
I usually tie my kids up right before our stream.
I'm calling Child Protective Services on you. No, I don't believe you. I don't believe you're tying them up.
Okay, I know. Not often.
Okay. So that's the drums, right? And there's a lot of power. Like you said, I could make a track just with the drums and the vocoder tweaking. But let's go on to some of the other elements. I'm going to turn that caterwauly kind of thing off.
Before you go off to the elements, you got one more question. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions about your drum beats. Apparently, they're that good. How do you feel about reverb on individual drums versus entire rack?
I feel great about it.
Never,
I think.
Okay, I'm never sure when I want people to think that my drums are in the same space or if they should be in their own thing.
I do both. I think you should do what you think sounds good. Just keep in mind, like, putting a lot of different reverbs on a lot of different sounds that can get messy. So you want to be careful about balancing, right? So, for using EQs and filters on the reverbs would help with that, for example. Like, let's say I want to put a great big splash of reverb on my clap or snare. Now, in this situation, I don't necessarily want to do it as an insert, because if I put reverb on the clap here inside of the drum rack, it's all going to get distorted through the pedal. And that might be cool if you're going for a more industrial, noisy kind of thing. Putting reverb through distortion is like mental. It's mayhem. But I don't know. Let's see what happens if I do that. But I'd rather do it a cleaner way. But because I talked about it, let's try it.
Prepare for the mayhem.
It sounds like it's screaming. See what I mean? Like, that's too much. But maybe a little bit. It kind of works. We're breaking the rules today. We're putting reverb through distortion.
There was a rule about that?
It's like, if you're trying to mix clean, you would never do that. But if you're making aggressive, noisy techno or electro, sure, do it.
Right. Okay.
But that said, what I was talking about with frequency. Is just be aware of different reverbs having different tones. So if you're using a lot of different reverbs, you want to think about whether it's bright or dark, and if it conflicts with other elements, or, you know, if it's longer decays or shorter decays. So you kind of listen, and you can create sort of complex, detailed artificial spaces by having layers of reverb at different decay times and different EQs and different stereo widths. That's another fun trick to do, actually, is have a sound with just total mono reverb and then another sound with super wide reverb, and it makes it sound even bigger and more spacious when you do that. Anyway, if I wanted to get a clean reverb out of this, I would need to set up a send to go out of the drum rack to another reverb that wasn't being included in this whole signal path going through the distortion. So, yeah. We go back to our rack and go to our input and output and activate our returns. And here I can make create a return chain and set that to, let's say, the reverb on in the session, right? So the return channel that this reverb is on. And now I have a send just for this that's only going over here.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
And let's make it, it's all mono now, like I was saying.
Mm.
And I'm using the diffusion network filter to cut out some of the highs so it doesn't get too crazy sharp. Sounds like it's in a tin can or a steel drum or something. It's great. It's like, sometimes I like using reverb sounds that other people would think sound terrible because it sounds great in techno or electro. But you would never put that like on a guitar in a nice, clean mix. Or maybe not.
Paul Gomez says Electro is a techno taco.
Paul Gomez, that's silly. But yeah, let's, you know, they go together.
He didn't say that. He just wrote techno taco. I put in the Electro is.
Techno and electro are like best friends. They're like, you know, they're not the same, but they kind of are the same. I mean, rhythmically they're very different, and there's different directions you can go into. But there's so much music that rides the line between the two. It's all, for me. It's all part of the same thing.
Is there a BPM that Electro favors?
133.33 beats per minute.
Why is that?
Now, that's like the official Serotonin Records BPM, because we always cut lot grooves on vinyl, and to make a perfect loop on a 33 and a third RPM record, you have to make your tracks at 133.333333 beats per minute. So that's the official Serotonin BPM. But I actually like fast electro. Lately I love tracks that are like 140, 150 beats per minute, and they're just like driving. Anyway, yeah, I think there's no rule for there's plenty of good slow electro. I think you can decide what you feel. But yeah, I guess what are the average tempos for dance floor music these days? It's like, it's a little faster now. Like if you're not doing housey stuff, it's like 130. Techno's getting faster again. Housey, yeah. But like if you're making techno electro, it's like in the 130, upper 120s to 130s to lower 140s is probably, that's the range. And then sometimes faster, sometimes slower.
What's your favorite, other than Serotonin being 133.333333? What's your favorite electro tempo to DJ?
To DJ, I would go from like that same range. I would start a set like upper 120s and build it up in energy over time, sometimes going up and down. And you know, if
to 140 maybe?
I've
Would you get to 140?
Yeah, I've gotten up that faster. I have a DJ mix that we're going to broadcast. There's a Serotonin Neurotransmitters stream, which we'll be posting about soon, and it ends, I think, around 150. Well, actually, towards the end, it gets up to 150, and then it goes slower again.
Hmm.
So, let's move along. I mean, we're about at like the halfway point, but let's look at the synths. All right. So I'm going to skip over this weird melody on the analog and skip to the bassy parts. This is like where the action is right now. And, you know, our friends from Arturia, who we like a lot lately, they make really, really cool plugins, and they let us have them, and we use them in our classes. And I used to own an SEM module, an Oberheim SEM module, which I regret not having anymore a little bit because it's small and it sounds awesome, you know. But here I have, again, an SEM. And it sounds great. And it's, you know, it's not just one, it's one module, but you can make it into a polysynth and do big chords too. Because like these used to come in like a 4-voice version that you could play big chords on, right? And they were really expensive.
Yeah, expensive.
Yeah. So I have got, this actually was just a preset that I tweaked a little bit. And I've talked about this before. I don't always make all my sounds from scratch. A lot of times if it's close to what I want and I'm working quickly, I just go through some presets and go, hey, that sounds good. And then go from there. And
you have a lot of fast notes and slower notes. How do you decide?
How do I decide?
Fast notes and slower notes, and where to go, where to move here, back and forth in the
okay.
On the
Well,
keys.
you can see what happened here. I started out, just jamming around a little bit. So actually, I'll expose my process a little bit here. This is I was letting the beat play, and then I was playing a keyboard. So it started out with me actually playing. Let's hear how this is going to be unquantized and messed up probably, but we'll see. So this is me actually playing a melody. And I am really, for electro, when I make bass lines, I'm really thinking of funk. Synth funk bass lines from like the 70s and 80s. Is what I'm informed by. So like Parliament Funkadelic, Zap. Think of Zap. Anyone ever listen to Zap? Roger Troutman. You know this guy? Everybody go on YouTube and look up Roger Troutman and Zap right now. You'll recognize there's like more bounce to the ounce, and there's all these amazing tracks, these funk tracks with big heavy synth bass lines and vocoders that were sampled for hip hop. That are pretty famous. Stuff like that. I love those types of big, juicy bass sounds that are played on analog synths. And then coming up with melodies and rhythms that evoke that style, but then pairing them with more aggressive, almost industrial style drums. So it's kind of a balance.
So electro is funky.
I like it best when it is, even when it's aggressive and fast. I mean, listen to some underground resistance in Detroit, like electro and techno bass stuff, and it can be really heavy and really fast, but it's got funk to it. And you know, James Brown used to talk about the one and emphasize. You hear the beats; they all emphasize the one, and it's the same thing with Parliament, and Funkadelic, and all of that. So this rhythm for me really emphasizes the one. There it is. So every 2 bars, it's like there's a note right on the one, and then there's a syncopation, and then some faster 16th notes that kind of lead back into the next one. So is
there a lot of swinging going on in electro? Do things get swung?
No, I mean maybe yes. It depends on who's doing it.
Okay.
The more robotic and Kraftwerky you're being about it, probably no. Or you're using tiny shifts, very precise shifts off of the grid. But I'll reference Underground Resistance again. Some of their best kind of electro funk informed tracks are totally swung and grooving in between. They're not perfectly quantized, which is great.
Would you say that Kraftwerk is funky?
They can be. I mean, I think someone posted an interview on Facebook recently about how Kraftwerk was open about their influence by American R&B and funk music. So they were like making, you know, electronic robotic versions of funk rhythms at some point, like for Trans Europe Express and things like that. A great connection to think about.
Wow, I'm learning because I haven't done much electro in my life. That's one of the things that I've let you do and stayed away from.
Well, I think you should try, and you can help me finish this one someday, maybe.
Well, I'm learning right now.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here at the foot of the master, learning all there is to know about Electro.
A little bit of what there is to know. There's always more to know. I'm still learning too. I feel like since you and I have been started teaching with Dubspot, and then now we're with 343 Labs, and I've known more than ever from teaching as much as what I did before. Like, we're always learning. I think we still have some other questions in the chat. We're at the halfway point.
We are at the halfway point.
Already
we should
taking
actually
our break.
do all our announcements. We should announce everything that used to be announced.
Like,
I don't know. It's your show, man. I'm just here for the ride.
Well, I was just going to say hey to some people and see who else is in the chat here. And there's some questions as well. I saw Andrew Duke was talking about the lot grooves. Yes, Serotonin used to do these vinyl lot groove compilations where we try to fit as many as we could. And we got a lot of interesting artists on those. I don't know if we'll ever do it again. The economics of vinyl is really, spend a lot of money to press 200 records. You don't even know if you're going to sell them. But, that is what it is. And we got a question here from Steve P. Can you play an instrument? Yes. Abe knows what instrument I started out with.
Violin.
That's right. I played the violin I studied intensely for 15 years, and I studied piano. I kind of got a big head start in music because my parents were music teachers. So I grew up with a house with like 2 pianos and students coming in and out, and concerts and recitals and music workshops. And, there was no hope for me. If I ever wanted to do anything else with my life, it was like music just was there from the beginning, and that was all I ever really was loving. So, as far as like business goes, all right, we're not doing the whole giveaway thing, other than I'm giving you my heart because I love all of you so much. And I'm really, I'm glad that the chat seems to be active and people are asking questions and having conversations. That that means a lot to us. Let's talk a little bit, as we always do, about where we're coming from. This is 343 Labs TV, and 343 Labs is a school in New York and now Berlin as well. And we teach music classes, music production classes, synthesis and sound design, music theory, songwriting, a lot of the things that you want to know. And things have been going, pretty decently, and we're enjoying our online programs are going well. I've got 2 courses going on right now. I'm doing an Ableton Live, second level Ableton Live, so like intermediate, and synthesis and sound design. What are you teaching now, Abe?
Oh, I'm teaching mixing and mastering.
Yeah.
At the moment.
So.
And a little bit Ableton as well.
Good.
A beginner Ableton class on Sunday.
Yeah, so I think we've got a good program going on, and we've got a nice community developing. I mean, we've always had that. That was one of the focal points for 343 Labs from the beginning, is like a community and get people getting together and doing workshops. And now we're online, in our COVID times, we're here streaming for you guys and, sharing what we do with you and trying to, expand our community. So please, follow our channel. Check out 343labs.com to see what courses that are available that are coming up. And I don't know, anything you want to add, Abraham?
Abraham, yeah. No, I don't want to add anything at this point. You caught me off guard.
You're saying Abraham? What can I say your full name if I get it right?
Yeah, go ahead, try
it. Carlos Abraham Duque Alcivar.
You could say that. Yeah.
That's the first one I learned.
That's the first one you learned?
That's like the one I heard a full name from you.
Oh, yeah. That's my full name.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah. The secret's out. Abe Duque. Sorry, did I embarrass you?
No, okay. It's not a secret.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a public record.
Yeah.
All right. That was awkward. I'm sorry. Let's keep...
Was it?
I need a drink of water. Anybody? It's hot in here. See, look at you. You've got a drink. You're smart. Let's get back.
Yeah, I've got a couple of drinks.
To some music. All right. All right. So I went through and just improvising You know, this is all just. All right. You know what? I just remembered what this is.
What is this?
I did a track on Serotonin called Velozoid. And this was me I unconsciously at the time playing the bass line in it, and I started playing this bass line that I already wrote. But then I just kind of went with it because it was fun. Right? And then I started you know. And then while I was doing this whole process, I started thinking, all right, that's cool, but I just realized that I'm replaying this old bass line that I made. So I started changing my direction. And then I just started playing fast 16th notes, and this is what I ended up with. Right, so originally I just had that 2 bars. And it wasn't played this perfectly, obviously. I was playing, you know, like... I've got 2 fingers, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? And then I went in here and quantized it. And then I had the idea, after I started getting into some other stuff, to make it more melodic. And I copied that whole sequence out to extend it. So it was really starting with the groove first, just on one chord, and then making a chord progression, just duplicating these 2 bars, copying it over, transposing it down to another chord, copying it over, transposing it up, and making it into a more complex sequence. And then I added another layer to this, and I'm doing kind of a call and response. So I have, gonna play, hello, right. So this is the same. It's the same as this, except I cut out the first half. So it's just a bump, 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 bump. And then I made another instance of the SEM with a slightly different version of the sound. It was started out as the same sound, but then I transposed it up and then thinned it out. And they're kind of call and responding. So one instrument is playing part, and then the other instrument is playing the answer. There's too much distortion on this right now. All right, so that was kind of that. Now I'm getting to the meat of it, right? I wrote the bass line, and then I made a variation of the bass line, and I have 2 different sounds doing the call and response part. And then I was trying to decide. It's funny. It's getting progressively a little bit more musical, starting with these brutal drums and then getting into the funk informed. I'm not going to say it is funk, but it's influenced by. And then, you know, it's becoming more electro sounding now. It's less sort of funky, but it still has a touch of it in there. I think it always needs to have a touch. And then I got an idea for a melody, and I wanted it to sound kind of grand and majestic and like almost like sci-fi soundtrack, or like, you know what actually jumped into my mind, which I've always loved since I was a kid, is the soundtrack to the original Dune movie in the 80s. You ever watch that, Abe?
You mean no?
Never watched Dune?
You mean the movie with Sting?
Yeah, that one. I loved that when I was a kid.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And you know, the soundtrack is just ridiculous. You know, the band Toto that wrote Africa, they did the soundtrack for Dune. And it's got all these big anthemic chords, and it's really cheesy, but I still love it. So anyway, I was kind of thinking of that vibe. I was going to this like futuristic electro industrial funk with like cinematic chords. And there's actually a track I did like that way back called Unearthly on like my only album I ever did that is similar. That's like heavy beats with sort of sci-fi epic chords. So that's what's going on here. And this, I think, is just another preset, the Spacious Choir. Yeah, it's in the core library. And it's a really nice sound. Let's check it out. Let's get the audio going and check it out. It's almost like you put that in a trance tune and everybody's going to be all like, Tiesto, I love you, you know, but I'm taking that like epic trancey sci-fi vibe and mixing it with this electro funk thing. So it's getting a little out there, but you see, I went a little bit too far with the harmony there, but you get the idea.
It gets a little soupy.
I like that. I'm getting old. I feel this nostalgia. I'm like, ah.
Well, nostalgia's fine. It's just a little undefined.
Well, no, but that's another, like, it is, you're right. And I'm just improvising. Like, when it comes down to it, like, composition-wise, I got to get a little more precise about what chord happens when. But we're just having fun here. Just throwing the ideas out. Laying bare our creative process in public for the sake of learning.
All right. Getting naked in public for the sake of learning.
I did not say that.
You said laying bare. That's kind of like getting
not
naked.
Not
me. And for the giveaway,
I told you I'm giving you everything today. You're giving you me.
All right.
Okay. So now here we are. We're down to the wire almost. We've got about 15 minutes left. Things have been going fine. I've been having fun hanging out with Abe. And we're at this point where I've got this sketch. I have these basic ideas, you know, and I've got this gamut of styles from the industrial, electro, kind of brutal drums that can be heavier if I want them to be. I've got the very stiff funk bass and then the variations of that combined with this like big soupy pad. What now? And I bet you all have felt this. You're like, I've got this loop. Where do I go with it? Abe, what do you say? Where should we go first with this? What would you do with these elements?
I would probably write some variations to things before I started laying them down as an arrangement.
Okay, well, I have a couple. I mean, just very basic. Like, and then right, and then I had the idea of just transposing down to this chord and staying there for a section.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have so I have some chord changes, kind of. Okay. But otherwise, yeah, not a lot going on there. Just a few different variations. I kind of don't...
Do you think you need more elements?
I kind of do, but I also want to just get this groove down and not have it be overcomplicated.
So you want to start laying it out as an arrangement?
Maybe. But no, maybe not. We're not there yet. Let's think about... Let's try to find a new element. I'm just going to get rid of this clutter. All right. I do have this one, which I'm not sure if I want to keep. Oh, let's get back to the right. Okay, start needs to be here. But then I had that one in actually first before I added in the more sweet, rich sounding pad, and I thought, okay, I only need one of those. So I'm leaning
At a time.
At a time, yeah. That I did think about that. This is sort of the darker, weirder version, and it's got a little bit of a Trans-Europe Express melody.
Mm-hmm.
The way it rises and ends chromatic with a chromatic step. And I can also just stop that. That's a variation, actually, not having it lead into the loop, just having it end on and resolving on that last E. So that's another variation.
So is your goal here to make a track out of this, or
Eventually,
is it just to have some fun?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's always fun.
Because, you know, we make music for a lot of reasons. You know, you can make a doodle just to have fun, or see something through and then create something to share with the public.
I like how we're getting philosophical today.
Yeah, I'm just well, because you asked me, and that kind of triggered my mind to like start to think about what to do next. Because what I do next, well, that would depend on what my goal for this, you know, project was. If it was just to have fun, I would just try more experiments.
Right.
And that's where I'm in these days. I'm just experimenting.
Yeah.
But if I was looking to think about making a release or sending it to a particular label, I would have to have a target.
Well, nowadays I have two, well, more than two, but first of all, I sketch all the time. Like I have tons of things like this where there's just a few parts and I just got the idea out, whatever it was, however I felt at that moment. So I have a huge library. Actually, not so much on this computer. I have like on my hard drives and on my old laptop. There's just like hundreds, at least, of sketches, loops, projects, unfinished projects with just ideas. And a lot of them, it's funny, a lot of them come from things that might have started in a class when I was teaching. And I you know, sometimes, a lot of times you're teaching, you demonstrate, you show them, the students, what they need to know or what they want to know or what's part of the curriculum, and then it goes away. But then sometimes you get inspired by your idea that you're teaching and then you keep it. And so I have, some of it is that, and I have to say, a lot of work from Dubspot until now, I have a lot of material that's come from the teaching process that I've kept. So there's that stuff. And I've actually made releases out of some of those things where I came back to it later and went, oh yeah, I was onto something with this. And then I went and finished it. So I no matter what the goal is, I'm always sketching. There's always like at least a beat or a loop or something. And then the next step of that is, what's it for? So, you know, if we do a serotonin release, and I'll go back through my sketches and pick out some that fit serotonin and then work with the goal of finishing and arranging a track for serotonin. And then there's doing what you're saying, where you're just experimenting and learning and exploring when you just keep fiddling around and trying new things. Sort
of meditative, just doing it for fun.
Well, and I see like you've gotten into modular hardware lately, and that's definitely like, if you're into exploring and the meditative process, that's perfect hardware and having your hands on things.
The problem, it becomes only that.
Right.
if you don't really try to record things,
it
becomes really only that. But I think what you should do now is like maybe get up and do the robot a bit, and maybe hook up a mic and do some like future dystopian lyrics with the robot voice.
You really want me to add vocoder to this? All right, here.
No, I really want to see you do the robot.
You want me to dance?
Yeah. I think that, well, you asked me what I wanted to see, and I'm just...
There's what you want to see and what realistically is going to happen, and they may not be the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Here's a fun thing. Robot voices, cool voices for stuff like this, but maybe you like don't have a good mic, or you're a little shy about using your mic and you can't think of what to say. And I'm not too shy about getting on a mic and saying things, obviously, but sometimes I feel like, all right, I want something, you know, specific for a track and I want it to sound a certain way. I actually have been using text-to-speech synthesis, like typing words and then having a computer say them. And then vocoding that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I don't know. It might take longer than 10 minutes to set this up. But bear with me. I'm going to switch gears here. I want to show you guys this. I'm going to show you how I did what I did. And going back to how we started, where you were asking me questions about the vocoder, this is a nice little loop to tie it all together. Let's do something cool and electro-focused with the vocoder and how it's more traditionally used. I used it as an effect on the drums. Let's use it to do a robot voice. So
Okay,
I'm just going
let's do
to
it.
quickly...
Exciting.
It might take a minute to load up the project. Where is it? And yeah, while in the background, I'm loading up a new project. And Abe, why don't we check in with the chat while I do my thing, loading up the new.
Well,
Ableton
Connor
Live
says
project.
that these sketches, he likes to call them hobo ideas.
Hobo ideas.
Yeah, because they haven't found a home yet.
It's true. It is true.
Yeah.
Oh, I think my mic input is live in here, but I'm not sure we want to do that. Let me turn off the monitor. All right, no input. Okay. This is another Electro thing. It's a little further along. It's got more points, elements, not points, elements. And of course, I also need to turn on the stream output. This always happens in my classes. I'll start showing people something, and I'll like, it'll take me like a second to remember that they can't hear it until I put on my special rack that I built. Everybody hear that? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So
I can hear.
I have a whole vocoder group here, and I've created some audio files. So here's one. Oh, wait a minute.
Synthesizing, formulating, never-ending consciousness, synthesizing.
All right, so that's actually all of the different vocal parts playing together. I'm trying to get it so we can hear just the
Synthesizing.
non-vocoded version. It's a little tricky. Maybe I have to turn the vocoder off.
That would help.
Yeah.
Synthesizing.
Synthesizing, right? So that's like if you go into if you're using a Mac, and there are similar options for PC. There's definitely plenty of text-to-speech synth software and like word processors and things that have speech built in. But Mac has voices built into its OS, and you can just use the text edit. And if you go into your system preferences, there's a place in accessibility, I think, to download different types of voices. There's different languages from all over the world that have different accents, and I picked a bunch of UK English voices, male and female. I typed out what I wanted them to say in text edit, and then hit the speak button and recorded them into Ableton Live into audio clips using. We used to use Soundflower for this. Now I think the free audio routing application is Black Hole. If you Google that, you can find out, and it runs as a device on your system, and you can route audio from one program to another. So I had the system audio going into Black Hole, and then I had Black Hole set up in my Live as an audio input. Right here, you can see where it says Black Hole. And then whatever the system is playing, I could set up an audio track and record. And so here's one of them.
Synthesizing.
Right, synthesizing. And this one,
Never ending.
never ending, and with the female voice, which is American accent. And then those are all routed. Those audio tracks are all routed into another audio track, and on that audio track is a vocoder. All right, so it's doing the same thing it was before, except this time instead of noise, I've got it set to external, and I'm routing a really big fat couple of detuned sawtooth waves out of operator. That's my carrier. So the carrier is being filtered in the vocoder.
Why sawtooth waves?
Because it's got every harmonic in it, and they sound big, bright, and warm. You want, usually for good, effective, like vocoder, like robot voices, you want a full frequency signal. You don't. If you put a filtered thin sound, then the output's going to be filtered and thin.
What about a sine wave, a fat sine wave?
Well, if sine waves can't be fat. It's like, unless you're playing 50 hertz, it sounds like sub bass. But you need overtones, you need harmonics, you need frequencies to filter. You got to remember the vocoder's a filter. It's taking away from the sound. So you want to start with more, and then shape it into what you want. It's subtractive synthesis, right? Okay, so that's the melody that I'm playing, and I'm harmonizing the vocal, right? So the vocals, the samples are speech, and then I'm playing a melody that's following the rhythm of the speaking. And then that signal is being routed into the vocoder as the carrier. And we're not hearing it. We're not hearing the operator directly. We're only hearing it through the vocoder. So here's the vocoder track. And the audio is routed into all these other tracks with the vocal samples are routed into the audio track with the vocoder. It always sounds good to EQ and compress your signal and having it sound good going into the vocal. Garbage in, garbage out. The better it sounds going in, the better it sounds coming out. So compression helps a lot with how well the vocoder tracks the vocal. And then out of I've got some, I've got saturation and then another compression, a glue compressor just to thicken up the output of the vocoder. And here's what it sounds like again.
Synthesizing, formulating, never-ending consciousness.
All right, so that sounds pretty good, right? It's like good, clean vocal recording with EQ and compression. You also have there's a gate if you want to tighten it up even more.
Synthesizing, formulating.
That can help sometimes with following the consonants.
Synthesizing.
I'm using a higher number of bands than I did for the drums. It's with 40 bands, you get even more accurate reconstruction of the original tone. It'll sound more robot-like if I use fewer bands.
Synthesizing, formulating.
That's more like Cylon. All right, and the other with 40 bands, it's like it's higher resolution. You're hearing more detail.
Synthesizing,
Sounds more human, well, relatively. And the other thing to be careful about is the attack and release on the vocal. You want to set it so it's not too long.
synthesizing,
I mean, you can still hear what it's saying, but it's not as precise on the consonants. So you want a shorter,
synthesizing,
tighter
formulating.
release. And then you can play around with the attack,
Synthesizing, formulating.
whatever sounds smooth. And of course, we have this formant shifting thing.
Synthesizing, formulating.
Whoa.
Wow.
I love the formant shifting. That sounds so cool. So we're out of time. We
Aw.
ate up the last of our time with my little overview of my vocoder processing chain and how I route multiple samples on audio tracks into the vocoder, right? I could do a whole hour on vocoding probably, and it's totally relevant to Electro because it's such a thing. It's cliche at
It
this
is
point.
such a thing, yeah.
I actually I try not to use too much. I haven't done a track with this much vocoder in it in years. Like, it's so cliche Electro to have robot voices, but then when you do it and it's done well, it sounds so sweet. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me learn a little bit from you.
yeah, and I know we didn't really like collaborate, but
Well, I'm not a electro guy. I mean,
Doesn't matter.
I can, I guess, if I tried, but now I know a little more, and now I feel like one day I'll be funky enough to be on serotonin.
I believe in you, Abe. You are. If I can be just a tiny bit funky, you can be a lot.
I'll try.
I think you can. I think you have it in you. We all do. And anyway, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to remember to actually look straight at the camera for once. I'm always like side-eyeing everybody. But here's my camera. Hi. This is my fourth stream. We originally, this is my first one got postponed on like blackout day, but this is my fourth stream. But I think we're going to kind of keep this going, right? The format may change a little. I'm still going to be the techno guy, whatever. It may be Techno Tuesday, it may not be, but we're going to figure that out going forward, how regularly we do this. And
Call me when you get housey.
when I do, but I'm not stuck in the house like tomorrow. What's our friend, what do we got going on for tomorrow? Is
that Justin's day?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not Justin.
I know. It's another guy, Lewis. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
That's his artist name. So yeah,
Lewis
he's
Peck.
stuck in the house tomorrow. Definitely come back and check him out.
Right.
And
then on Thursday, we'll get some music theory from Max, which we're all looking forward to.
more chords, Max. Should do something on reharmonizing. Is that too complex? Reharmonizing melodies? That's great for remixes. Actually, that's totally relevant. It's like if I might do this if I do a remix thing sometimes, taking a vocal and then taking it completely out of context in a new key. That could be a fun idea. I'd love to. I challenge you, Max, to reharmonize a vocal live in front of people. And thanks for joining us. As ever, check out 343labs.com to see what we've got coming up in terms of courses. Subscribe. Do all that stuff. Do all that social media stuff that streamers ask people to do. And thanks to Abe for being my wingman today. It's been nice hanging out and keeping an eye on the chat and chatting with me. And who else is still here? Lightning Tree, Connor, David is still here. TWD Interface, that's a cool name. Delirium, Andrew, etc., etc. You guys have been here from the start, so thanks for bearing with us as we handle our business. And I'm going to say more awkward things.
Handle our business.
Yeah, I know, right? I just don't know where that came from. I think I'm getting hungry and thirsty. I'm dehydrated. I haven't had lunch. So I'm going to go have tacos because it's Taco Tuesday. And we'll see you probably next week. And definitely come back tomorrow for Louis Beck, Stuck in the House. Adios, guys.